Hey guys, today I'm going to talk about controlling the eccentrics in your lifts and when you want to do it and when you don't want to do it. This was a question I got from one of my athletes that I coach one-on-one. For him it was in particular with regard to the squat, but I think this can be applied more broadly. And it's a great question because it depends, in my opinion, on three different factors. The first factor is your goal. The second is how familiar are you with the movement pattern in question. And the third is how much risk are you willing to take on for bigger lifts. So let me explain these. The very first one is your goals. For bodybuilding, it's almost always better to control the eccentric as much as possible by keeping the antagonizing muscle groups tight. So what I mean by that, let's say you're doing a bicep curl. I can just focus on my biceps. So just focus on curling the bicep, keep everything else loose, right? Try to isolate the bicep. But actually, I think many of you will find that you'll get a better contraction. You isolate the bicep on the way up, flex the triceps as hard as you can, and think about performing a reverse grip push down. Keep the biceps tight. You're using almost as an isometric, right? You're trying to fight that tension in the triceps as you lower the bar. This obviously will require the use of a slightly lighter weight than if you didn't do it that way, so that's a trade-off that you're making. But in return, you probably will develop your mind-muscle connection a little bit faster. And in addition to that, your time under tension throughout the duration of the set is going to increase. And generally, more time under tension results in faster results, generally. So that's one example of where you would pretty much always want to control your eccentric. Now, let's get into the other side of the equation, which is powerlifting. In powerlifting, let's say I'm doing a squat. Let's say I'm controlling the eccentric all the way down. Right, the time under tension could be a bad thing. And the reason is I'm wasting a lot of energy doing that. This is where the familiarity with the movement pattern comes in. If I'm a really, really good squatter, and I've been squatting for 10 years, and I'm pretty much a master at it, I don't need to control the eccentric that much. I've practiced this movement so often that no matter how fast or slow I go, it's going to look the same, more or less the same, every time. And if I'm Yuri Belkin, it's going to look literally the same every time. If I'm a beginner, it's probably going to look very, very different. If I'm a beginner and I'm not controlling my eccentric, chances are my form's going to really go to shit. I'm going to lose control of the bar, my hips are going to shoot back, my chest is going to fall, my bar path is going to be all wonky, and generally it's a bad look. Even though you're conserving energy by not controlling the eccentric, not keeping those antagonizing muscle groups tight, you're able to use more weight, maybe, but chances are what's going to happen is because you fall out of the groove, your technique is off by so much, you're actually going to be able to use much less weight, and you're going to increase your risk of injury. Get to increased risk of injury a little bit later. So the easiest way to see this, I think, is in lifters, very high-level lifters. Yuri Belkin's a great example. Dan Green's bench comes to mind. If you watch Dan Green's bench, he drops that bar on his chest, but then every time he presses it up, it looks almost identical. And I'm going to show a few videos of myself benching earlier in this year and then how I currently bench, and you can see the difference in the speed of my eccentrics as I get more and more comfortable with the movement, and as I get more and more comfortable with the movement, you can see the weights go up and up and up. But let's get back to that third point, which was adversity to risk. First of all, there is the case that, okay, you lose the groove, you're more likely to get injured. There's another factor at play, right? As you descend in a movement, you're putting the muscle groups that are involved under a stretched load, or under a loaded stretch, which is not an inherently risky position, but does tend to be the position where you're more likely to get injured. Now, if you're controlling the eccentric the entire way, and we'll use the bicep curl again as an example, you're keeping those triceps tight, you're controlling this eccentric, as soon as something feels off, you can bail. Especially if you spotter, drop the bar. If it's a curl, tell your spotter to take it. The very second something goes wrong, you have more time to react, and you're going to be able to do that earlier, kind of in the movement because you're completely in control throughout the entire range of motion. Contrast that to if you're essentially dropping the bar, you have so much momentum on that eccentric, you're not going to be able to control it. And as you hit the hole in the squat, or as you drop the bar on the chest, don't drop it, but as you lower the bar to your chest on a bench press, you feel something go wrong. By the time you can fix that, that bar's already gone through a full range of motion, and you may very well have taken the muscle past the point where it can tolerate that type of a loaded stretch. So anytime you are using fast eccentrics, know that you are taking on that risk in exchange for the potential to lift more weight. So all these things are, you need to think through them before you decide, okay, how am I going to approach my eccentrics for this particular training session, for this particular mesocycle, whatever the case may be. This is why more times than not, you'll see bodybuilders doing very slow eccentrics. Probably 50-50 when it comes to powerlifters. Again, that's because of the other two factors involved. How good are you at the movement? How willing are you to take on the extra risk of injury? But as long as you know those factors, you can account for them in your decision-making process, and you can choose the method that works best for you.